Welcome everybody to Go Local Live. I'm Josh Fenton, CEO and co-founder. We take a trip down to Florida. We've got Professor Nadia Ahmad from Barry University, and she has had the experience of being at the Democratic National Convention and having an unfortunate situation there, actually, with some Rhode Islanders. And I wanted to welcome her on. Professor, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me on. It's a pleasure to be with you.
Okay, so you go to the Democratic National Convention, and it was a very different convention, I think, than many have seen in the past. It certainly had some issues of division, but it was really under a theme of sort of, you know, I'll use the Democratic word, joyfulness. Talk about why you were there, and then what the message you wanted to communicate to the party.
So I was there. I was an elected DNC member from 2021, so I was part of the Florida delegation. I was also serve as co-chair of the DNC's Interfaith Council, as well as serve on the executive committee of the DNC's Women's Caucus. So I was there, to support, the Democratic Party, but I also felt it's important for the Democratic Party to end this genocide that is happening in Gaza, entering month 11. And so we had decided to prepare a banner to share on day one of the convention when President Joe Biden was going to be addressing the convention. And so it took quite a bit of work to get the banner in. We got it in, and we also had a hard time getting people to be a part of the action. People dropped out towards the end, didn't want to participate in it. And the party also intimidated people who had showed interest in participating as well. And so on the night of when we were doing it, we were really down to 3 people to be a part of this action, to hold up the sign that said "Stop Arming Israel." We felt it was important to bring the voices of youth voters, as well as those of Muslim, Arab, and Palestinians, to the convention floor, and to really show that this issue of supporting war and ignoring the anti-war base of the Democratic Party was an important thing to do. And so we got there to the convention floor. Our plan was, we'll hold up the sign. We weren't going to chant or anything, just hold up the sign, and then eventually security would take it away. We thought the whole thing would take a minute or two.
Sure. So you go and you're seated sort of up, near a concourse level, and you post the sign up, you roll it out. And what happens then? Some of the folks from the Laborers International then begin to interfere with your effort to put up signs. And just make it clear to everybody, there are signs all over the convention. I mean, conventions are about signs almost as much as anything else.
Yeah, the signs that were at the convention, they were provided by the DNC. So those were all like authorized sanctioned signs, but there was other people who had brought in other signs. For example, there was people who had brought in Israeli flags. And so it wasn't anything unusual to have political signs at a political convention.
Right.
There was nothing unusual about that. But the delegates for this time around had been super vetted. Anybody who had been critical of the administration in any way was delisted as a delegate. I know this happened to at least 5 or 7 people in states like Florida, Texas, Virginia, Massachusetts, as well as in California. So all the people who were there generally were fairly establishment Democrats. And so they were not happy when we took out this sign. And we were okay with that. We felt that we were supporting a specific cause and that we were entitled to our First Amendment rights wherever they are.
Okay, so you unroll this sign and all of a sudden you are hit in the head with by somebody behind you. What was the immediate reaction? Did you know who was behind you? And, what was your experience?
So I'd never done anything like this before. So there's like quite a bit of adrenaline, like worried about what will happen, like maybe we'll get arrested or whatnot. So I just remember telling everybody at the beginning, just hold on to the sign no matter what. So in that calculus of preparing for this action, the idea that somebody would start hitting me on the head as I'm doing this didn't figure in. And I also didn't, I felt that if I turned around even to stop it, I may fall down because it's like a very steep area. and it's a small area. And in fact, when they first started hitting me, I did kind of fall forward in my chair, and just kind of got jolted forward. And then, but we still held on to the banner, and then I just stood up again, and stood up with the banner again. And then they started hitting me again, and I didn't see who was hitting me. Like I just felt like something like on top of my head. I didn't want to turn around because I didn't want to get hit in the face with whatever they were hitting me with. And I figured that they would just stop, or security would show up to stop it. Like I didn't know that they would keep doing it. We did also notify the trusted press in advance, so it was captured from a lot of different angles. At some point, maybe about 3.5, 4 minutes into it, the police did show up, that were at the convention, and one of the people who was, on my one of my sides, he was Jewish, and so the reporters were talking to him, like they had kind of walked up to the stairs, and so Amy Goodman from Democracy Now! Was there, and one of the people from the Florida delegation had in fact also been hitting her. And then when they realized it was her, they were like, "Oh my gosh, I love you. I'm so sorry that we were doing this." Ryan Grimm, who was previously of The Intercept and now is at Dropsite News, was also there on the scene. So when they were trying to interview Liano Sharon, they were standing backwards, and so the police officers told them that they needed to leave, because the other people wanted to listen to what President Biden had to say, and so they took him outside, to talk to the reporters. But me and Isam Berea, who is from Connecticut, part of the Connecticut delegation, we were just there standing for a few minutes. Isam wanted to leave, because of like what had just transpired. But I just wanted to kind of make it clear that we weren't removed from the
Right.
event. We just kind of walked out on our own.
Those that
Um,
hit you, how did you realize who they were and were able to identify them? I've seen a copy of, I believe, a note letter you had sent to the chair of the convention identifying them by name and your concerns about this episode.
Yeah, I sent the like a DNC official complaint to Jamie Harrison, who chairs the Democratic National Committee, and we identified them because in the box office they were sitting in, they had these bright orange seat covers, and somebody before was making small talk with them, and they said that they were with Leuna, which was like essentially a
Yeah,
construction work.
it's literally headquartered here in Providence, Rhode Island, and Michael Sabitoni, who you identified in that letter, as well as some other officials, is well-known political player here. That organization helped direct a lot of third-party money into the sitting governor's election campaign, over $600,000. So you identified them. What did the police do with these folks who had been hitting you in the head with a sign?
So nothing, because we just walked outside. Like we felt it was a fairly hostile environment. So I went outside, and then that was really the end of it. But then, like I realized later on, like especially when my head started hurting, that they actually did something wrong to me. It
Yeah.
didn't occur to me at the time to report it as a police like assault or a police crime, in the sense that this was an assault and battery, just because of like the intensity of what was happening. But I did go later on to the police station, to the Chicago Police Department, and file an official complaint. And by that time, we had also identified the people from the video footage, who were involved, in hitting me on the head. And what's unusual, or not surprising maybe, is that there was other people also holding up the sign, but the only person that they struck was the Muslim woman who was wearing the headscarf on her head.
Um, you know, have you received any apology either from the Laborers International Leuna or any apology from the Democratic Party or convention officials relative to this?
I have received no like formal apology. I just received a phone call, but it was just that law enforcement will take care of this matter. Um, and what's really astounding is that the governor was sitting right in the box right over, and based on the footage we have, he was looking directly at it. And then at some point decided to look away and pretend it wasn't happening. And even the deputy campaign manager for President or Vice President Harris's campaign, Quentin Fawkes, he was also looked at and just looked away, and decided that it's okay to just be there, a bystander witnessing violence against women.
So, I watched a fair amount of the convention. I've watched a fair amount of both conventions to get a sense of it. It did just seem to be sort of a unity convention, as the Republicans did, and kind of till Donald Trump's speech the last night. But the Democratic convention seemed well orchestrated until I had seen some of the video of this incident taken from a little distance away. I thought it was a pretty much, very unified and well orchestrated event. What's your takeaway from this entire experience, and how disappointed are you in the reaction, the response, and the lack of apology?
Well, I'm not surprised because essentially what you saw was like theatrics of what's been happening for the last 11 months, where people are getting slaughtered and killed in Palestine, and people just want to look away and pretend it's not happening, the same way people like in positions of power thought it was okay to hit me on the head, and then other people in power who thought it was okay to just pretend they didn't see anything. And that's really how U.S. foreign policy has been for the last several decades, like my entire lifetime.
Professor, you've got an undergraduate degree from Cal, law degrees from Florida and Denver. You're a wildly accomplished academic as well as professional. How frustrating is this for you?
Well, for me, I think that I knew going in. In fact, on October 6th, I had met the vice president for a photo opportunity when we had a DNC meeting in St. Louis. And then right after that, we had October 7th and the attacks. And I just saw the way the administration was responding to it in a very one-sided way. And so somebody from the campaign, her campaign had reached out to share the photograph. And told me, that they would be in touch. And I told them, responded back right away, that I showed them a picture of my calendar from the year 2068. I was like, that's how long it's going to take for me to be accepted within the Democratic Party. And so maybe my grandchildren will be alive then. Maybe I'll be alive to talk to you, because this is not even that I'm fighting for my children. I'm fighting for my grandchildren. But I would like to be alive to be able to see those grandchildren.
Professor, you get the last word. Anything else you want to add?
This is basically this issue of Gaza is standing between the vice president and the White House. And is it really worth it to Democrats? I know they don't care about the people that are being slaughtered. Like, they don't care if they're killing my people, but they should care that this would have a lasting impact in terms of their control of the Senate, their ability to regain control of the House and to stay in the White House. And is that cost really worth it?
Professor, greatly appreciate you taking the time. For everybody else, stay tuned for much, much more. We'll have, throughout the weekend, we'll have coverage. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.